On September 16th, 2023, World Series of Warzone kicked off, and the trios that qualified from around the world got their chance to compete to earn $100,000. And one of the favorites to win the entire thing was Biffle, Shifty, and Sage, who had been dominating online tournaments. A lot of people accused them of hacking because they were playing so well, but they came into the World Series of Warzone looking to prove people wrong, and that's exactly what they did, dominating the entire tournament and beating second place by 75 points. So I think it's safe to say that they were easily the best in the lobby. And following this win, Shifty commented on the potential of him joining the CDL, and it sparked the endless debate about Warzone Pros versus Call of Duty League Pros. And even just a few weeks ago, Repulse was on a podcast with Hitch and talked about how Biffle, who also won the World Series of Warzone, had offers to join CDL teams. And then just as recent as last week, it came out that no CDL teams were actually interested in Biffle, and the debate goes on and on about if Warzone Pros could compete with the best of the best in the Call of Duty League. So I wanted to talk about it a little bit today and answer the question that has been asked since the beginning of Warzone: if the top Warzone players could compete in the CDL and vice versa. I think the answer is pretty obvious, but at the same time, there's some good opinions floating around. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. The CDL versus Warzone debate has been around since Warzone started, but it started becoming a bigger topic after Optic Scump got a chance to compete in the World Series of Warzone Solo YOLO tournament, which had some of the top Warzone players at the time alongside content creators that competed in a solo Warzone game for $100,000. So of course, if Optic Scump got invited, he wasn't going to turn that opportunity down, but he hadn't played Warzone in months, yet he still hopped on and ended up having a very dominant performance on Verdansk, dropping 11 kills, and he had this crazy gunfight with Aiden to secure the victory and win $100,000. And for many people, that settled the debate right there, because Scump hadn't practiced for this tournament and won it just off of his natural skill and awareness, showing that CDL players were just steps ahead of everyone else when it comes to anything related to Call of Duty. But the debate goes even deeper than that. As I said at the beginning of the video, after Shifty, Biffle, and Sage won the World Series of Warzone, there have been talks about Shifty and Biffle being in the CDL, which raises new questions about whether or not some of the top Warzone players could become successful in the Call of Duty League if they dedicated the time and effort into it. And with all these questions about Warzone versus a CDL, there's two sides. If I were to give like head captains to both sides, on the Warzone side, it would be like Repulse and Aiden, because Aiden be trash talking on Twitter. And then on the opposite side, on the Call of Duty League side, I would say probably who would say like maybe like Zuma and Scump, because he won the World Series of Warzone. So you got both sides of the argument of Warzone versus CDL. Who is better? What is easier to become the best at? And for the Warzone side of the argument, these are some takes from the Warzone community in regards to all the questions that we've been asking in this video. Repulse was on the Around the Bar podcast and said this.
The reason that like that the competitive COD is because comments hates on Shifty is because isn't it Shifty that say he could play in the CDL if he wanted to?
Yeah.
That's faded as
Think so?
yes, that is. Come on.
I disagree.
You're insane.
I disagree.
You're insane.
Now we fast forward and multiplayer, and not in a bad way, but isn't as popular anymore, right? Warzone has kind of taken that, like everybody, Warzone is that next thing. So it's like, okay, the people that are goated, these insane superstars, where are they gonna go? Where are you gonna find them now? And a lot of these guys, the people that nobody knows about, are Warzone because they don't know any better. They're going to play Warzone. It's a free-to-play game. It's more accessible, and they're really good at the game. But now you teach them how to play other things, and they're going to fry. Big reason of why I think Diaz, yeah, he played S&D growing. He played a little bit of variant. Like, I genuinely believe you put that man in the CDL, and Crowder has said he can do it. Like, a lot of people, I mean, let's be honest. I'm not going to leak anything, but he got offered multiple spots in the Cdl. Like,
he can't talk about it. And he said no.
He said no. Again,
he would get fried.
Right. Like,
if you want to get deeper into the Warzone community, you will also find takes like this.
Do you think Biffle could do pretty well in the CDL?
Of course he could.
Hey,
a lot of CDL players always think they can't. I constantly see that argument. CDL players are always like, Like, maybe Biffle could compete, but he wouldn't even be close to a top player in the league. And it's like, they think he doesn't have the skill set. I'm sorry, I'll never agree with them, and I'll never fully understand their reasoning. But I think being the best Warzone player in the world is way more skillful than being the best CDL player in the world. Maybe that's a hot take for CDL players, but they act like there's so much strategy. You sit there and hold an angle and wait for some guy to run around the corner. How do you think Biffle would not be able to do that? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
And the main argument is Call of Duty League Pros transition to Warzone. It would be much more difficult than if, say, Biffle were to transfer over to the Call of Duty League. Essentially, becoming a Warzone Pro is more difficult than being in the Call of Duty League. I will say that Repulse's take is a really solid take for the Warzone side of the argument. On the other side of the debate is the Call of Duty League side. There were some very heated opinions on the CDL side of the debate, but here are some takes from the Call of Duty League. Zuma tweeted out, the best COD players in the world are in the CDL. There are only a select few of Warzone players that can make the switch if they dedicated their time to the CDL, but it won't be easy. Also, stop with the 1v1 arguments, although they're very entertaining to watch. Awareness, comms, positioning, routes, teamwork, timings, there's a lot that goes into being a pro COD player. Then also on the Call of Duty League side of the argument, Tim the Tatman actually commented on this.
There is a legitimate thing going on in the community, in the Call of Duty community, where Warzone streamers and players are talking to CDL pros. And at the end of the day, there are some very good Warzone players. Extremely good Warzone players, man. And there's also extremely good Call of Duty CDL pros. One thing that I got to give a point to the CDL on and CDL pros, this man Scumpy came off of not playing Warzone, hopped in and won the $100,000 solo thing. If someone made me choose, right, who's better, Warzone professionals or Call of Duty professionals? Right, CDL pros. I'm picking CDL because that's what the fucking core of Warzone is Call of Duty. These CDL guys have been doing this for so long.
And for this side of the argument, becoming a Call of Duty League Pro is much more difficult than becoming a top Warzone player. And the fact that this is an argument is kind of insane because of how talented and how difficult it is to make it into the Call of Duty League. So now looking at both sides of the argument, there are some very interesting takes, in my opinion, on the entire thing. I think it's hard to compare Warzone and the Call of Duty League just because of how different they are. But it's no doubt that being a pro in both the COD League and being at the top of Warzone or World Series of Warzone is extremely difficult, and it takes a ton of skill to do that. I think becoming a top Warzone player is much more accessible than being in the Call of Duty League. And I mean, there's even some extremely talented Challengers players that aren't even in the Call of Duty League. We need to get my boy Temp into COD League ASAP. But at the end of the day, I do have to agree with the Call of Duty League side. CDL players are just on a whole nother level. That's not to say that Warzone players aren't extremely skilled, but I think the Call of Duty League has some of the best. And if they dedicated their time, they could transition to Warzone successfully. But like I said, I'm not taking anything away from the Warzone players. I just think that the CDL is genuinely harder to get into. But I do think that there are a few exceptions in the Warzone community of players that could make the transition to the Call of Duty League if they invested the time and energy to do so. There's also players that did play professional Call of Duty that made the transition to being a pro Warzone player. For instance, Tommy and Rated were both professional Call of Duty players at one point. I think players like Biffle and Shifty could actually make it into the league and be successful because it is not easy to be as consistent as they are in Warzone, and that's just a whole nother level of talent. So I do think that there are a few exceptions in the Warzone community that could make the switch to the Call of Duty League. But when it comes to the heart of the debate, the only way that it could truly ever be settled is if there was a way to see the top Warzone players go at it with some of these CDL pros in some sort of series. I'm not sure what that would look like, but if there was a way to set that up, I'm with Mbos on this one. I would absolutely love to watch it. I've been seeing this debate floating around really ever since Scump won the solo YOLO tournament. Even up until this morning, I've seen people tweeting about it. So I thought it would be interesting to cover some of the takes, and I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say down below. Let me know some of your thoughts on the entire debate, and if you think it should even be a debate to begin with. But with that said, if you guys enjoyed this video, I made another video similar to this one about why Warzone 3 is the key to saving Call of Duty. So if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, peace.